Hey there, welcome to Papercraft Panda. In today's guided tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a French Link Stitch journal. This tutorial will use the materials included in my complete book materials kit. You can find it on my Etsy store. Your materials kit has everything pre-cut. It includes 32 sheets of Mohawk superfine paper, 2 linen laid end sheets, 2 pieces of high-quality double-sided design cardstock, you get to choose the pattern, 1 pre-measured hole punch template, 72 inches or 6 feet of waxed linen thread, a craft glue stick, and 1 curved bookbinding needle. There's also a few tools that I recommend you have at home. A 12-inch ruler is always handy, though you should not need it for this project. Scissors, a pencil, an awl or a thick, sharp needle. I like to affix the needle to a piece of cork, if you have it. A bone folder, or you can use your fingertips. Heavy books or something similar that's flat that you can use for a book press. Scrap paper for gluing, and then optional, if you're going to use liquid PVA, a paste brush, or you can use your fingertips to spread that PVA is always helpful. When you open up your kit, you're going to have thread and a needle, just like this, and we're going to use the thread and needle later, so for now, go ahead and wrap those two up and set them aside. You've got 2 sheets of design cardstock. The pattern is different on each side, so you can choose what will be the outside and what will be the inside. The 2 linen laid sheets have a nice texture to those. Go ahead and set those aside as well. And let's start out by separating these 32 sheets of Mohawk Superfine. I like to fold back like this to give my thumb some purchase, count out 4 sheets, and make a stack. The next 4 sheets I'm actually going to lay perpendicular to the first set. That way it's easier to pick up those signatures later. It's a pretty straightforward step, so I'll go ahead and speed this up for us. Now that we've got our paper separated into stacks of 4, we're going to go ahead and fold our signatures. To do this, you're going to take all 4 sheets at once, fold them all over just like this, line up that front edge, especially the top or bottom corners. Then you're going to press on the bottom right with your thumb and smooth up. Using a bone folder, go over one slightly and then set that sheet aside. Let's do it together just one more time. You've got all 4 sheets in a stack, fold it all over at once, line up those edges. I like to use my fingertip to get them as close as I can, smooth from the bottom right up, and then once over with a bone folder. Of course, if you're left-handed, this would be opposite for you. Go ahead and finish folding the rest of your stacks. I'll kick on a little bit of music and speed it up a bit for you. Once you're all finished folding your signatures, go ahead and create a stack. I like to go over them once with my thumb like this, then separate that stack into 2 sets of 4. Once it's separated, turn one the opposite direction, and then we want to put them under some weight. For the weight, I have these little blocks. They weigh about half a pound. I also have a little bean bag. It weighs about half a pound. Either will work. I prefer to use a little kind of cutting board like this. Place the weight on top and let it sit for 10 to 25 minutes. While those press, we're going to fold our covers and our end sheets. Your end sheets are these ivory colored sheets of paper with the texture on them. We're going to fold them individually using the same method we did before. So we're going to fold over, let those corners meet, press on the bottom right with your thumb and smooth it up, and then once with a bone folder. Set that aside and let's repeat that process with the second one. So we'll fold it over, try to get those edges to meet as best as you can. Nothing is ever 100% 90 degree. Then go ahead and press and smooth, and we're done with that step. Now let's pick up our cover stock sheets with the pattern on it. These sheets are designed so you've got a pattern on each side to choose from, and I need you to pick which one should be the outside of the book and which one will be the inside. For me, I like to have these on the inside with the peaches on the outside of the book. So what I'm going to do is fold it with that in mind. We want the blue on the inside, so we fold it so it's on the inside. Let those corners meet, press down with the thumb, smooth up, and then once with a bone folder. We'll repeat that process with this one. And you can really have any of these. You could even switch them up if you want to. I like the way that this one looks with the peaches on the outside, so I'm just going to keep it this way, but you have a choice. You can do it any way you want to. Now what I like to do is just create 2 stacks out of these. I take one of the ivory sheets and one of the covers. Decisions, decisions. There we go. Sandwich them together like this. And then we're going to place that under weight for 10 to 25 minutes. And you can see I've got 2 of these little cutting boards. They're from IKEA. They're bamboo. Best $5 I ever invested. You can use something like that or just a heavy book. As long as it's flat and can apply uniform pressure, you're gold. Now we definitely want to press them for 10 to 25 minutes. If you can go for a few hours or overnight, even better. Once they're done pressing, we'll go ahead and remove the boards and the weight. Return the signatures so that all of the spines are facing the same direction. Now I did choose to press mine for 24 hours, so they're nice and flat and even, and that helps during the sewing process. Let's go ahead and get our cover sheets and our laid linen sheets out from under the press as well. We're going to separate these into 2 stacks. One will be the front of the book and the other will be the back of the book. We'll need these in their 2 separate stacks for the next step, which is cover prep. During cover prep, we're going to actually glue our cover front and back cover to the front and back end sheet and front and back signatures. Don't worry, I'll walk you through this. Let's make sure that you have some scrap paper on hand for gluing, a bone folder which will get out the excess air and glue, and your glue stick. You can also use liquid PVA if that's what you prefer. Go ahead and pick up your book block. This is the front and this is the back. I want you to lay one linen end sheet. This is your front end sheet and this is your front cover. Then flip the book over, lay the back end sheet, and this is your back cover. All of the spines should be facing the same direction. Once you're ready, I want you to pick up the front cover, the first linen laid sheet, which is the ivory color, and the first signature, set them aside. Now move the rest of the book block out of the way so it doesn't get any glue on it. Just really quick, here's what we're going to do. We're going to glue this ivory sheet to the edge of the first signature, only along that spine, and then we're going to glue the cover to the ivory sheet in the same spot, just along the spine. In bookbinding, we call this tipping in. It really helps us create a firm hold at the front and the back of the book since those receive most of the handling. Now let's go ahead and grab our scrap sheet. This is mine. I had a lot of failed attempts while I was creating this lined paper for bookbinding, but it was all worth it. Slide your scrap sheet under the spine of your signature, like so. Grab your glue stick. And I want you to put about 3 millimeters of glue along the spine. Make sure that you have your ivory sheet ready because this glue dries pretty quickly. Begin at the center and move up, and then at the center and move down. Put a lot of glue on here. It's totally fine. It dries clear, so don't worry if it's a little messy. Then lay down the ivory sheet. Get it lined up with the spine so the spines match as much as possible, and then get the tail of the book, so the bottom or the top lined up as well. Smooth with your fingertips to get the excess air out. But then if you have a bone folder, definitely go over, start at the center and work your way to the top, and then center and work your way down. We want a nice tight seal between these sheets. Now in this first method, I'm actually going to press this piece alone by itself before I add the cover. So go ahead and place it under weight for about 10 to 15 minutes. When we get back, we're going to take the board off and the weight off. Check this out, make sure that it's nice and tight and dry, and then we are going to glue the cover just like we did the last 2 sheets. So start at the center, work your way to the top, and then center to the bottom with your glue stick, and liberal glue is totally fine. Then take the cover sheet, lay it on top, line up those spines, and then repeat the process as we did before. Smooth it first with your fingertips, get out all that excess glue, run your thumb along the spine in case there's a little bit more, and then use your bone folder to press again from the center up and the center down. Now that you're done pressing, it's time to put it back under weight, and I always recommend it stay for 10 to 25 minutes, but if you can leave it for an hour to 3 hours or more, even better. While that's pressing, we're going to go ahead and get started on the back of the book. Before doing so, I like to write a small F on the front so I don't forget what was the front and what was the back. It's a very light F in pencil, just like this, and it helps me remember once the book is completely deconstructed so I can bring it back together. Now flip the book over, grab the back cover, the back linen laid sheet, and the last signature. We're going to go ahead and glue that direction by repeating all of the other processes, but we're going to do it in one step. Let me show you. Slide your scrap paper underneath the spine of the signature just like we did before, but you're going to be facing the opposite direction now. Apply the glue from the center up and the center down. Liberally is totally fine, and remember it will dry clear, so don't worry if it looks messy. Now go ahead and get that ivory sheet on as quickly as possible. Line up those spines and give it a good firm press with your fingertips and follow with the bone folder. I mentioned that this is an all-in-one step, which means that we're not going to be pressing this one before we add the cover. We're just going to go straight to adding the cover. There are benefits to splitting it into 2 drying steps, but I think that the books operate just fine if we do it all in one step and we let it dry adequately. Now this cover stock, as with other cardstocks, can sometimes have a matte coating. It just helps reinforce and keep the color brilliant. That coating can also make it difficult to adhere, and so it's okay to add extra glue. Don't be afraid to be liberal with the glue. You can always wipe away the excess with your fingertips, just like I'm doing here. Now I'm going to take my scrap sheet, I'm going to turn it the other way, like inside out. That way the glue's on the inside, and then I will lay this down and press it under weight, again for 25 minutes, but if you can press it longer, that's awesome. Once everything is dry, it's time for us to assemble our signatures. Go ahead and take the weights off of our front and back cover. You can see mine is pretty flat and pretty dry. I let it dry overnight. That's usually what I do in the Pacific Northwest. There's just more humidity in the air. Now take the book block, and I happen to know that because of the direction the spines are facing, this one is actually the back cover. This goes on the back, just like this. Then I flip the book over, and it's time to add our front cover. So I'll remove the weight from my front cover. Make sure that it's good and dry. And it is, and so we're just going to lay it on top like this. All of the spines should be facing the same direction, so take a quick peek, make sure that it is, and it's time for us to prepare for sewing. The first thing we need to do is pierce our signatures. To do this, I want you to make sure you know which side of your book is the top. It should be where you wrote the F on the first signature. Now set the block aside, grab the first signature, and open it up on the inside of the signature, not the cover. So I'm going to dig through here, there we go. Take your template and line it up with the top or the head of the book. At this moment, I realized I did not trim my template short enough, so bloop, there we go. Miracle of modern video. Now follow the little black line and puncture through all 4 sheets of paper using your awl, just making a mark at that location. Then remove the template and use your awl to go through the hole to the other side, and you want it to come out about 1 to 2 millimeters. So you should be able to see just the tip of your awl on the other side, and repeat the process for each of the holes that you made. When you're all done, I want you to turn this over, set it away from you. And you're going to repeat that process with every single signature so that you don't accidentally get them out of order. Another way to do this is to line up the template and then do your puncture and pierce all at once. So you would line it up like this and just push it through. Line it up, push it through. There are benefits to both. However, I find that I get my template less screwed up. It doesn't slip around on me if I just do the points and then pierce fully through later. You do whatever works best for you. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up, but feel free to pause or go back if you need to keep up with me. The next step in our sewing process is to thread the needle. If you hear a little hum in the background, that's just my printer. Okay, to get started, grab your thread and the needle that came with your kit. Go ahead and unwind the thread. We want the thread to be nice and long, no knots, so I like to go over it from the bottom to the top with my fingertips like this. It kind of warms up the wax a little bit too and makes it more malleable. Now we have to pass the thread through the eye of this needle, but the thread is a little thick. So what I like to do is I like to take my awl and flatten just the tip of the thread so that there's about 1 to 2 millimeters that are flat like this. You can use your thumbnail if you don't have an awl or anything that you have around the house. Now it should easily pass through, of course I say that and then miss. You should easily pass through the eye. And you want to pull the thread until there's enough where you can just poke through the center of the thread itself, like this. Now move the poked thread down the needle until it gets to the eye, and then just work it down to the eye with your fingertips. I like to use my thumb and forefinger to just pinch and pull it over the eye of the needle like that. Now you're all done, and we are ready to sew. Okay, I've made a ton of these books, and this clip is from the same book, just a previous recording. I want to use it to go ahead and show you how to set the signatures up on the table so that you can start sewing correctly. Begin with the spine facing you on the table and the front cover facing up. You should have the top of the book on your left and the bottom on your right. Pick up all of the signatures except the last one and just flip them away from you, like that. Now you should have the bottom or back signature ready to go, and we can start sewing. So go ahead and pick up the signature in your hand. Take the needle and move it into the sewing station, the very last one at the bottom of the signature, from the outside to the inside like this. Open up the signature and then gently pull the needle through and keep pulling on the thread until there's about 2.5 to 3 inches worth of a little tail that remains outside of the book. So that little tail should look something like this. And we're going to tie that off later, so 2.5 to 3 inches is usually plenty for us to do that. Once that's ready, take your needle and move it into the next sewing station up from the inside to the outside. And when I pull, I'm actually pulling toward my left hand. This just allows the thread to move through a little bit easier. And there's a lot of thread to work with right now, so take your time. And then I like to lay the signature down, press with my right hand to hold the tail in place, and then pull with my left hand to add tension, just like that. Go ahead and take the needle and go back into the signature from the outside to the inside through the next sewing station up. And as we work on this first signature, it's really important just to maintain the position of the tail and to try to keep adding in some tension as we go. Here again, I'm going to hold with my right, pull with the left, and then hold with the left and pull with the right on the tail. Gets that nice tension. Now we're going to move from the inside to the outside through the next sewing station up, still pulling toward the left. And since we're in the center of the book, it's much more stable, but I'm still going to hold with my right, pull with my left, and then I'll go back into the signature from the outside to the inside, just like this. And as I'm nearing the top, you can feel the top of the signature get a little bit more flimsy, like a little bit loose. So just take your time. After adding some more tension, I'll go from the inside to the outside through the next sewing station up. Go ahead and pull the thread through. Using care at the top of the book where it's a little bit looser, there's not as much stability, and then go ahead and add a little bit of tension. Now we're going to fold it shut and press the spine around the thread. And to add the next signature, we're going to fold it like this. So pick it up from the stack, flip it forward like this. And then we're going to take our needle and go through the top sewing station like this, from the outside to the inside. Now when you pull the needle through, you're going to feel it's a bit shaky and loose, so take your time, support the sewing station with your fingertips. And then once you get the thread through, move the needle from the inside to the outside through the next sewing station down. Go ahead and tug the thread. I like to stop here because with all this thread you can get loops like this. So I like to straighten that loop out and then go ahead and finish pulling the thread through. To add a little bit of tension, I'll line up the spines like so, hold down with one hand to give a tug with the other. It's still going to be a little bit loose, and that's okay. Now we're going to create our first French link stitch. Move the needle behind the thread directly below, staying as close to the current sewing station as possible. It should look like this. Pull the thread through, and it should hang to the left like this. Now go ahead and return the needle into the signature through the next sewing station down. Pull the needle through and all of the thread, and when you pull that thread through, it's actually going to lift the thread below it, which makes the characteristic X pattern that we see with the French link stitch. You want to add tension, so go ahead and line things up and pull with your right hand to get the tension in place. Then exit the signature through the next sewing station down. You'll notice that I do a lot of tapping and a lot of adjusting, and that's because the first two signatures are a bit loose next to one another until we get the right tension in place. Let's go ahead and create our next French link stitch. Again, we're going to feed the needle behind the thread directly below. And once you pull the needle through, try to keep that thread as far to the left or as close to the sewing station that you're in as possible. Now move the needle back into the signature through the next sewing station down. At this point, we want to go back and adjust our tension again, because when you lift it up and put it down, it loosens things a bit. So we're going to pull the thread all the way through, line up the spines as much as we can, and you see how loose that is? Pull with your right hand to tighten it down, but now the leftmost is still a bit loose. We pull up with the center and then pull down again. So you're just moving the tension along the spine. Now exit the signature through the next sewing station down, and this is the final sewing station on the second signature. Go ahead and pull the thread through. Sometimes you'll catch the tail, and that's fine. And once you've got it all the way out, I like to open up, adjust the tension a little bit, and now we're ready to tie these two pieces of thread together. To do this, just go ahead and create a simple knot. I like to get the knot started first, but before I tie it all the way down, I adjust the two signatures so that they are as even as possible. Then I hold down with my pinky, and I pull with my thumb and forefinger on the left and on the right. Now we're ready to return the needle into the same sewing station that we were just working with. So we're going back into the same sewing station, making sure not to pierce through the knot that we just created. Go ahead and open it up, support the area around the sewing station with your fingertips while you pull the needle through, then pull through all the thread, and when you reach the end, you're going to actually pull that little knot into the inside of the signature. To do this, support the area on either side of the sewing station with your left hand and gently pull up with your right until the little knot pops inside. Now we're going to go ahead and create an additional knot. Loop the needle behind the thread to the left of the knot, and then careful not to pull it all the way through. You want a little loop like this. Then feed the needle back into the loop, just like so. Pull that and it will create another knot around the knot that you've already popped inside of the signature. And this is an optional step that you can do. It adds additional security, but it can make it a little bulky on the inside of the signature. So it's completely up to you. Once I get the second knot in place, I do like to pull on both threads to tighten it down. And now you actually exit the signature through the same sewing station again. So move the little knot aside like this, feed the needle into the sewing station, and take your time doing this so you don't accidentally over widen that station. I sped this up a little bit, but I'm actually going very slow. Once you've got the needle outside the signature, pull through the rest of the thread. Now you're ready to go ahead and clip away that extra little piece using the tip of a scissor. Okay, now we're ready to add the third signature. Off the pile, flip toward you, and lay it down. Using your needle, go ahead and enter the last sewing station at the bottom of the signature, just like this. Remember to support the sewing station with your fingertips as you pull the needle through. Now once you get all the thread through, exit through the next sewing station up, and we're going to create our next French link stitch. To create the stitch, go ahead and move the needle behind the thread directly below, so that's the signature directly below the one you're working on. Go ahead and pull the thread through, keeping it tucked to the side close to the sewing station that you're working on, and then go back into the signature through the next sewing station up like this. Pull the thread through, support with your right hand, and add the tension with your left. So you want to tighten that down. A little tug, there we go. Not too hard, otherwise you'll tear the paper. Now go ahead and exit the signature through the next sewing station up, and we're going to repeat the process. To do that, go ahead and feed your needle behind the thread directly below. Pull it all the way through, make sure it's hugging the sewing station side, and then return the needle into the signature through the next sewing station up. At this point, we want to make sure that we adjust and add a little bit of tension. Pull the thread all the way through, support with your right hand, tug with your left, and then take the needle and exit the signature through the next sewing station at the very top. Now once you get outside the signature, you're going to create something called a kettle stitch. The kettle stitch is fundamental. It holds these signatures together at the head and the tail, and it has to be tied after each signature is added moving forward. To create the kettle stitch, you're going to loop the needle behind the thread holding the two previous signatures together, like this. Make sure that the long piece of thread, this one, is over to the right, like so. Pull the needle to the left until a small loop forms, like this. Now pass the needle up through the loop, like this. Go ahead and pull the thread and a knot will begin to form. Before you tighten down the knot, set the signatures on the table, line them up as good as you possibly can, then press down with your thumb with one hand and use your dominant hand to pull up. That will create a little knot, and now you're all done. You still have some wiggle room, so you can adjust those signatures if they slid on you. And now it's time to add our next signature. Go into the signature through the top sewing station. Pull the thread all the way through. Line things up, and then move your needle out of the signature through the next sewing station down. Now it's time to create your next French link stitch. Move the needle behind the thread directly below your sewing station. Pull it through, keep it close to the station, then move it back into the signature through the next sewing station down. Go ahead and pull the needle and all the thread, giving a slight tug to get the tension that we're looking for. Now go ahead and exit through the next sewing station down and form your French link stitch by moving the needle behind the thread directly below. As we did before, go ahead and pull the needle all the way through, keeping it close to the sewing station, then go back into the signature through the next sewing station down and pull a little bit to tighten that down. Now exit through the bottom sewing station, and here's where we're going to want to do our next kettle stitch. So like I said, you want to repeat this after each signature has been added moving forward, so at the head and the tail. To do the kettle stitch, I'll show you up close here. Move the needle behind the thread holding the previous two signatures together, like this. Pull until a small loop forms. Then move the needle up through the loop. Hold with your left hand and pull straight up to make the knot. At this point, the process will completely repeat itself until the very end of the book. So go ahead and add your next signature. I'm going to put on some music and speed things up a little bit, but feel free to stop the video, rewind, whatever you need to do so that you can keep in step with me. I'll jump back in at the very end and I'll show you how to tie off the final signature so you can start using your book. Welcome back. It's time to add the front cover of our book. Adding the front cover is really simple. The sewing process is identical to every signature you've added previously. What I want you to focus on is tension. As the front cover of the book, it will undergo more stress than any other part of the book, as you can imagine, opening and closing and moving it around and so forth. To make sure that it's nice and tight, stop after each entry. So every time you enter the signature from the outside during the sewing process, make sure that you're stopping to tug on the thread and get it nice and tight. You don't want to over tighten it to where you tear the paper, but definitely tight enough that you can feel it's nice and secure. At this stage here in the center, I'm going to just tug, make sure that's down nice and tight. Then I'll exit and continue the sewing process. Okay, at this point, go ahead and tighten down the thread, exit the signature through the final sewing station at the bottom. And once you get outside, go ahead and tighten that one more time. Get that nice and tight. Now we're going to go ahead and sew the final kettle stitch. Again, we're going to go behind the thread holding the previous two signatures together. Make a loop and then come up through the loop. Before you tighten this loop down, make sure as best you can that all of the signatures are nice and straight and aligned. Now we're going to actually go back into the signature through the same sewing station. Make sure that you don't pierce through the thread itself. Pull the needle through and all of the thread. Then I want you to loop the needle behind the thread just before the sewing station like this. And we're going to just make a really simple knot. Pull the thread away until the knot forms, and then using a scissor, cut away until there's about 3/4 to an inch of thread remaining, and then just tuck that little tail of thread under like this. Now you're all done. Let's go ahead and take a look at our finished book. After your book is complete, it's always a good idea to put it under some weight for at least 24 hours. This is going to help get any of the air out of those signatures that we added in when we were sewing. Now let's take a peek inside the book. We've got this beautiful linen laid paper that welcomes you, and then this is where your writing would start. Of course, we can see all of these really pretty exposed stitches on the inside, and the book will lay completely flat on any page. It's really handy if you're an artist or you just like to write on a flat surface. And at the end, we're going to see a repeat of the beginning. You've got this beautiful linen sheet for your outro, and then of course, you've got the double design cardstock, which wraps it up just beautifully. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and the kit itself. If you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to reach out to me. You can get in touch with me at hello@papercraftpanda.com. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.